been very clear. Our mission has never been about growing or even retaining customers. Our mission is to do the best job we can do. My job performance has never been based on how many people use Soup. My job performance is how well is Soup run. And if we run it well, people will use us. That's a sign that we are doing well. The fact that we've grown so much is not because we went out there saying we need to grow. It's we need to be good to our customers.
I'm Rachel Coble.
And I'm Liz Dean.
Welcome to Mock It. This podcast interviews industry experts from AI innovators to UX architects to nonprofit leaders and lots of people in between.
We explore the back of the napkin ideas that impact the nation, so you don't have to dig for the discoveries yourself. Enjoy and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Today's episode, we have Joanne Woytek, which I probably just said her last name very wrong, but she did tell me that most people say it wrong, and the only time someone said it right was when she was in Czech or Serbia? Slovenia? Eastern Europe. So, as a little West Virginia girl myself, I apologize for butchering your last name. But we are really excited to have her on. She works at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center as the program manager. She has been there for almost 50 years, which is insane. She has so many great stories, both personally and professionally. We cover a lot of things with her. I know Liz is very excited for this episode.
Yeah, Joanne is a queer trailblazer, and it was great to talk shop a little bit about her experience, both from a professional side, but really her personal experience, and get some great inspiration from all of the work that she's done on the personal side of her life's journey.
Yeah, so definitely tune in, and we're really excited for you to watch and listen.
So first off, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're very excited. So one of the things we want to note is that you have a long-standing career at the Goddard Space Flight Center, over 40 years, and you also now have been there through the inception of NASA SEWP, which is the acquisitions program. Could you give us a little bit of background of your background, and then also, if it's possible, to kind of explain what GWACs and government-wide acquisitions are? I mean, no question.
So that was 45 minutes? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Spark notes.
Okay, quick career. My degree is in physics. I was at Rochester Institute of Technology back in the 70s. Got myself at NASA to be a programmer in support of primarily the meteorologists doing research there, working on imaging and graphics and data. So the first half of my career was around those areas. Been working on supercomputers. Did a lot of imaging and graphics work back in the early days of that those times. It was there for the first start of Pixar. I was at the conference when that kind of exploded.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
Yeah. So really involved in a lot of fun stuff there. And again, supercomputing and then data centers. I was I helped put together the pilot data center for Earth Sciences. And eventually found myself to get to we can go back to any of that if you want, because that was a very quick first 20 years. And lots of good things happened there. But you asked specifically about the current situation. So in the early 90s, NASA was looking to help a scientist get his computer faster. And so that's how this all started. And three guys, I call them the godfathers of SEWP, one from procurement, one from policy, and one from technical, got together and started thinking of this concept they called SEWP, which at the time meant Scientific Engineering Workstation Procurement, attempt to set up a contract that could then easily be leveraged to buy IT from. I was recruited to go to one meeting. That's the only time I was supposed to be there by my boss, and ended up being further recruited to be part of the technical, one of the two technical leads of SEWP 1 in 92. In 93, we started this program called SEWP. It was not meant, as mentioned, it was just a scientist we were trying to help. NASA said, hey, this sounds good. Let's make it for all of NASA. And at the time we had to go to GSA, who had to give us a delegation procurement authority to do this NASA-wide contract. and they said, hey, we had this new idea. We're trying to think about called a GWAC, government-wide acquisition contract. Would you guys be the pilot? And we said, well, we don't really want to, but if you won't let us do it, otherwise we will. So we did not go seeking this out, but we became the pilot in the first government-wide contract of this type in 93. At the time, it was a single award set of contracts. It was very small. We had a lot of restrictions. We were just trying to figure out the rules. The Clean Cohen Act had not yet passed, which was the eventual mechanism under which government-wide contracts exist. But we went through that period, found there was a need out there, kept growing, and eventually, became officially under the GWACs with the Clean Cohen Act, with SEWP 2. So the whole concept is to set up a contract or a set of contracts. Again, back then it was single award. Now it's obviously multi-award. The rule sets have changed in terms of the FAR and such, that provide the framework upon which IT purchasing can be made without having to continuously start from scratch is the basic idea. So all IT is available through these contracts. You still have to do some work at the agency level, but at least the basic contractual work is done and you're just doing an order against an existing contract. So we do a lot of the initial work up front, and been through 6 iterations. We're now the biggest IT contract in the government, surpassing even the schedules at this point.
Wow, nice.
That's not something we want. Again, we weren't going for that, but so the goal has always been to support our customer and in the best way we can. I come from that. That's my background. Back when I was doing programming, it was for the scientists. I was programming to support those customers. In 99, we decided that up till then we were not a program in anybody's organizational chart. I decided to see if I could become a program manager instead of just a programmer, and stupidly took that on because I was not ready to do that. But I've learned over almost 30 years now of how to hopefully be a good manager, and have helped lead a fantastic staff into growing from a 15 people to now 120, 130 people staff.
Oh,
and again, servicing the entire federal government. Every government agency uses us. We and GSA are the only 2 contracts in which every agency uses us continuously.
Wow. That's very impressive. And I'm sure you weren't expecting that when you took that one meeting.
No, it was not. And I should point out that when I decided to become to ask the group that was running SEWP at the time, I was part of that group, could we set this up as a program? And quite honestly, I wanted a promotion. That's what I did. I said, if I go around Goddard, and if somebody takes SEWP as a program and gives me a promotion, I'll be the program manager. Is that okay? My same boss, no longer my boss, but said, "Oh, there's no future in that." And he was wrong.
He was wrong.
He was a great boss, but always wrong about that one meeting and the fact that there was no future in me being the manager of SEWP.
Not the worst things to be wrong about.
Was that hard on a personal level to go from, when you think, you're working at NASA, like that's really cool.
Technical mathematics.
Yeah. Going up into space and programming, stuff like that. And then to be moving to the acquisition side, which.
So the reason I took it on was, I was in the 90s, I shifted back from the data center to supercomputing, but I actually was just down the hallway from the program office. And there was a set of contractors working there, and we ran it as a committee. There was SEWP did not exist on anybody's organizational chart. But I had a computer under my desk, and I love computing. I love the challenge, and I just saw things we could do with the program that were outside of my normal job at the supercomputing facility. So I started taking on more and more of the technical piece, and eventually took it all over and just put the database on my system and just started writing it in because it wasn't getting done like I wanted to be. So I was just, at that time, I was just go off and just do it. And so it was really, early on, I saw it more as just an extension of, I have lots of ideas of how to make this program work. And many of them still exist in the framework of what we do today. And the whole, if you go look at the current staff, there's a large group that came in around 99, 2000 when I became the manager, who came in with me and still with SEWP today.
That's impressive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
So it was really about the technical piece of running it. learning the acquisition piece, came with time. But and learning how to be a manager also came with time, because that was a big thing for me to learn. But I saw it as a challenge, and I look at managing in much like I looked at programming, which is a problem to be solved. How can I solve it? And the problem in managing is people versus code, but it's still how do I take this staff of different people and how do I make these ideas develop, and so it becomes a problem solving. Is to me what it means to be a manager, and why I enjoy it so much. It's always a new challenge to me to solve, and that's why I like programming. There's always a new challenge to be solved.
What were some things that helped you on your leadership journey? Were there any books or classes you took, or mentors, or anything like that?
So I'm not good at remembering exactly.
That's okay. Neither am I.
I will say that I think of the things that most struck me, there was a book I read that talked about how you can't change other people. That was a big wow for me, because I always thought I could. Like, why can't you just be like this? Why can't everybody just be like me? Why can't, what, I'm thinking this way. Why don't you think this way?
Yeah.
And when I realized that, no, my job is to figure out how to adapt to who they are and not make them adapt to who I am. So I'm sorry I don't remember the book, but that struck me, that has resonated with me throughout. And as I say, and those people who've been with me since '99 will say, I was not a really good manager at the start.
You had to be somewhat good. Yeah, still there.
Well, exactly.
I became really good. I believe I am a really good manager.
You were good enough that they didn't run away.
Well, we had a vision, and they liked the vision, and there are, and I think there are personal things I did not realize were going on that also kept them with me in terms of inside of me. There was something that kept them there, and I did have a strong technical leadership that helped them, but becoming that more so in the managing and leadership of a program in the way that I am now, it was definitely a learning experience. I did take there was a USDA leadership course. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is an important thing to understand. That's also part of that
for life.
Yes, it's funny because I came from the technical world. In the technical world, you all think the same way, and so it's diversity of thought is not something to think about. and I have enjoyed the challenge of having to now think, how do I handle this person? Thinks this way, that person that thinks this way. They both have equally valid thought processes and are going to the same goal, but they don't know how to work together. My job is to find ways to make it so they can work together, and understanding that's what it means to be a leader versus managing the people to be what you want them to be. Yeah.
Do you have any, I know a lot of people have stuck with you for a while, but do you have any new generational people on your team? And is that a challenge?
So, obviously we've gone for 15 to 130, so we have a few new people.
Hopefully you have some Gen Z. I don't know.
And we have recently added to the civil servant staff. That's gone from 3 to 11, which is not as many as 120, which is mostly contractors, but it has allowed us to increase the depth of both the age and skill set and diversity, again, of thought and background. And the more Gen Zer ones that come in now, I probably have less to do with because of my position. And I don't, not because I want to have less to do with them, but I don't have, I have to rely on the other staff to now manage. So that's been another big change. I used to know everybody and everything and do everything and be able to do everything. And now I don't. And that's great. I have a great staff that I don't have to do that because they can do it, and I can just respect and rely on them to do their jobs. Another hard thing for me to learn as a manager, but it was important to that success. You do that, and then I don't think it matters the age if you give people respect and and opportunity and understanding of their roles and support for that. And if they fit in, they'll fit in. If they don't, it doesn't matter what age they're at, they won't fit in.
It's a mindset.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you balance? So acquisitions are not the easiest subject matter. So how did you balance bringing up a staff where you're learning the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulations, which also changes from time to time, and then just sort of from like doing some different various user interviews, like it's like trial by fire. Like that's sort of how you learn the FAR. That's how you learn the acquisition process. How did you navigate that as a manager with people who are in different backgrounds of knowledge and then also different learning styles?
So we don't directly work much with the FAR in a sense.
Okay.
I know FAR Part 16.
Yeah.
That is the FAR part that so the FAR is put into different sections. Section 16 deals with IDIQ,
all the acronyms.
The contracts, such multi-award contracts of the nature of SEWP, and the GWACs all fall under that. Certain rule sets, that everybody needs to know in SEWP. The rest of it, we have a contracting staff that is especially now that we're bigger, is its own group and a CO and so on. And they, when it comes down to the FAR parts and how this all works and working with small business, they are, I know when to leverage it over to that group because they have the knowledge and we actually have a better setup recently with that. I used to have a deputy who was previously a CO, so she handled a lot of those within the program. But now we have an actual contracting officer staff that can handle those things. So I don't have to know the details. I need to know how to understand what is the purpose of our contract. And our purpose again is to provide a framework. We don't interpret the FAR. My program does not do that. It does not tell people what the FAR says. I mean, we tell them what the FAR says. We don't tell them how to interpret what the FAR says because those are two different things. FAR, as I've learned that the FAR says things, but there's still a lot of interpretation to that. That has to be left to the agencies. How to make sure that we have a program that envelops the entirety of the government also, which every CO has their own interpretation of the FAR. So it's those actions I have to understand. It's not what the FAR says. I have to understand this person's talking about FAR Part 12, and this one's talking about FAR 15. Do I need to worry about that and give it to the contracting officer? Or do I need to let them worry about it and have them deal with it? I don't need to know the details of what they're going to do with that because they're going to interpret it at the end anyway. It's going to be something that is the agency issuing it, or it's going to be a policy contracting issue that has to be handled by somebody else at NASA. So you have to know your spot. I guess that's the bottom line. You can't, if you try to be everything, you can't, you end up not being, good at what you are there for. And we're there to provide that program support, that level of support of how to get to our contract holders, how industry interacts with us, making sure that we have a good platform, making sure that we have good information, making sure that we're constantly finding new ways to get that information to our customers, and how can we make it easier for them to use our processes. So that's, the acquisition piece. I know acquisition from the SEWP and GWAC point of view, but outside of that, I'll let the experts handle.
Was it hard when you became a manager coming from a technical aspect of not necessarily always knowing all the technical stuff that's going on and having to understand that you need to go ask other people these questions? Because I feel like that would be hard if you come from something where you know everything.
Well, it evolved. So the first decade or so of my doing this, I was both manager and the main technical person. I mean, I actually knew every piece of it.
Yeah.
So it, as we grew and as the staff grew, and so I was able to, it's not just having people, but you just have to have people.
Yeah.
So as we were able to have more people and they grew, the system of admin that came on and the programmer that came on in 99 with me and helped build this program are still with us today. So, but they don't do what they were doing before either, because we have other folks. We have a large programming staff now, not two people, just myself and Al, or one system admin. We have a large system administration group to do that. So you have to evolve to let that happen, and I just don't have the time. I have to know enough well, I don't have to know the FAR in detail. I have to know enough about the FAR. I have to keep up. I have to know who to leverage. I have to know about policies enough that I can know when I need to step in or when somebody from staff needs to step in and where they're doing. So it's managing that part of it without having to worry about knowing every detail of every action.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Was there a point in time, you talked about how, at the beginning when you became a manager, maybe wasn't you weren't as strong as you are now. Was there like a story or a point in time where you're like, I got this? Like in yourself, you're like, I am now a competent manager, or, like the evolution of, you're like, whoa, like there, like you felt like a change within yourself?
I think going back to that story of learning that I had to think in terms of that you can't change other people, that it was such a important piece, because I was a strong manager. It was just a strong, bad manager because my strength was in trying to get people to be, here's, just get this done, just do this, and without understanding that you have to figure out where they're at. So it wasn't, there was no specific situation that occurred, but that started percolating in my mind. And then I had to figure out how, and I'm still figuring it out. I'm not the perfect manager. I still have things I'm better at and I'm not. And that's also important to know, is that you're not perfect enough to do everything. So, to do what you can, do the best you can, and leverage, those around you, and understand their strengths, and that all those were lessons I had to learn over 20 some years of doing this.
No, it's okay, Liz. With how much you've grown since you started this role, what do you hope is like your lasting legacy within the project and your work, and what do you hope to leave behind? I know that's a very intense question. It doesn't sound like it, but it always feels like it is.
Well, at this point, I'm 67 in a couple days.
Oh, happy early birthday!
So obviously time is hitting, and all those people who've been with me since '99 are sorry folks out there. You all are also getting older. If I do my job correctly in these years, I will leave behind a group that will be able, the younger group, or even not super young, but the middle level management, I will leave them the ability to continue and be who they are. It should never be it's not my program. It's the staff's program. And if it's my program, I have not succeeded. If it's my style that is the only thing that matters, I have not succeeded. I've succeeded if, sure, it's my style now, but what matters is, what is the style of the program, and make sure that people understand that and can take that over when it's time for them to do so, as they are doing so as we speak. So trying to find more and more opportunities for that to happen.
Oh, that's great. I feel like the world would be a little bit better place if all leaders felt that way as the time they were leaving, especially in government.
So your retention rate of keeping staff
is insane.
Yeah, it's like sky high.
That blows my mind.
Do you have advice for up and coming managers or current managers of how you've cultivated this community of just,
people who want to stay?
Yeah.
Well, I think having there's certainly the part that we have a mission that we agree upon and that we love, which is we're there to support the customer. We're very much driven by that. I think being at NASA has certainly been a major piece of the puzzle, because if you look at NASA in general, there are people still older than me still there. I'm like, wow, that person is still there. They seemed old when I was first in the 70s. Because NASA itself has that culture. That's why they're always the top place to work.
Everybody wants to work at NASA.
Yes, it's cool. And a lot of it's cool. It's the mission. If you have a cool mission and you cultivate the culture to buy into that mission.
Yeah.
Don't just assume that people will see it, but keep working towards that and making sure that they're a part of it. And they become a part of that mission, and then they don't necessarily want to leave because they understand, I got something to be here for. This is something I want to do, not just something I have to do.
I love. Yeah, the first time I learned about NASA when I was in elementary school, you always just think astronauts and Florida and going to the moon. And then as I got older and I realized there's all of this other crazy stuff that NASA does, I'm like, wow, the world's so big.
Sorry, I wanted to, as you were saying.
Sorry, I had no point to that.
No. I also was thinking this might also be like, oh, the world is so big question that doesn't really apply to what you do. But do you work with a lot of stakeholders like NASA itself, DoD, civilians, contractors? But first off, how do you navigate working with all those stakeholders? But then also, do you ever interact with Space Force?
We interact with every part of the government. As I said, everybody uses us, so we are, but in doing so, that means that we don't directly, I don't spend a lot of time on any single one. Yeah. I don't spend a lot of time with any of them now because, again, staff. Yeah. And a great staff who can do that. We just, several of my staff are down in Montgomery. I'm sure there's Space Force people there for a big Air Force conference. So I used to go to I used to travel 75% of the time. I was somewhere meeting with customers and industry and speaking and being on panels, all that. I don't travel very much anymore, but I have staff that is set to do that. We have liaisons now for certain groups that Navy, for example, very big customers. So we have a naval one, NASA. We have a NASA liaison. So we're trying to, for those bigger agency users of SEWP, just to make sure that we're tied in with them. But we're still trying to make sure that every agency, whether it be small 3-person group down in the commission who uses us, or if it's the Space Force, we still want to make sure that they all feel that we're there for them. And the mission, customer is the mission for us. And the customer is government and industry. That has always been a highlight of the SEWP philosophy from day one. Before I even started, was industry is our partner, not our enemy.
That's great.
So with navigating such a large team, how did you all handle the pandemic? How was that as a leader with having a great staff that, one, like we've already talked about, huge retention rate, but two, you have a large staff. That's hard for anyone to manage, especially on like a remote basis, while trying to deal with the fear of the immediate news of the pandemic. So do you have any stories if you want to revisit that time in your life?
we got very lucky in that I don't remember the timeline exactly, but several months before we had a real fire drill. We had a fire in our building and we had to immediately evacuate the building and we both work remotely.
Oh, okay.
So fortunately, being the NASA-oriented program that we were always thinking ahead, and everybody had laptops. Everybody was already set to be able to work remotely without even at that time having remote workers. We always, one of the stories of thinking ahead was I was one of the very first people to have a BlackBerry back when they were these little devices that nobody had, because I recognized the need to have that connectivity, even if I'm not in the office. Everybody had a laptop long before everybody had a laptop, because we knew there are times when you just needed to be remote and be able to work. So we were prepared. We had that fire drill that worked. Everybody knew what they had to do. So it was not as difficult. We were about half the size, I think, as we are now. We doubled since the pandemic started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of the growth has been in the recent years. So
have we listened. But they're government, so that's true.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have, as I mentioned, civil servants have grown, and we had a couple of new civil servants come in. And one of the things about being a civil servant is you get to do the oath. And I still remember the oath in 1977 and standing there and raising my hand and doing the oath. And the poor people who became civil servants during the pandemic, they never got to go do it in the office. They did virtual, and they came up recently. So new person, I just came in and did the oath. We never really got to. It was like I always want to take them down to the building and say, let's do it again, just so they can do it again. It's just different in person than it is online. So
That's exciting that you guys are so tech forward. What has been what do you think are going to be some of the major trends you see coming up of tech in your work that you are ready or excited to implement?
So
if you're allowed to share.
So no, that's fine. I tend to lead what is happening, not take what's happening. So, the BlackBerry was one. I will tell you, I wanted
a BlackBerry
back
bad.
In the 90s. I developed a way to do interactive web forms before Java and JavaScript existed. So
cool.
Always looking at what can we do for the customer. So our latest push, or my latest push, and with the support of our core part of our staff, we really want to figure out a way to realistically do visual, what I call visual navigation of the information that we have. We have so much information. We have so much trouble getting our customers to find that information and to present it in a good way. And the tradition and the web, so I mentioned that web form for one a couple reasons. One, it's something cool I got to do. But the other cool thing is, the other unfortunate thing is that was 30 some years ago. And yes, then we had a little revolution in web design, and it hasn't changed since. The web interactions are no better than they were, in my view. In fact, sometimes worse. The scrolling you do, all this, trying to find things can be so difficult and painful, and not custom oriented. So, trying to find a way to make it it's not virtual, it's visual. So I'm not talking about a virtual world.
Yes.
More of a visual world where you go to our site and visually you see how to get to the information. Because I think people can see better than they can interact with words.
Yeah.
And try to, you need words at some point, but how to get to those words, how to get to all that information that we have. We have so much information on our website. Nobody can find it. Nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows where to start. Well, how can we make that doable? So we're spending a lot of time figuring out that and working with the concept of the visualization that occurs and how we can do it. So it's not something that's out there for anybody else is doing, but it's something that I feel is going to eventually have to be the next step in the evolution of the web.
Oh, a UX UIer's dream. I agree. It's very hard when you go on a website and you just don't eat. There's too many buttons. You don't know where to go. It's too much information. I remember early in the pandemic, I was one of those people that lost their job pre this job, and I had to do unemployment, and that website took some years off my life. That was hard to navigate. I had no idea what I was doing.
So I had to go to give an opposite one. I went to the Social Security website, and I actually, in 3 steps, I found Medicare. Because I'm getting that age. I just said, I wonder what the rules are. And I found it right away. I said, that's what a website needs to do is if I can intuitively just go there and in 3 steps get what I want, that's great. And somebody had thought through the flow of it. And then you go to another website and there's a website, there's a form I just did where they ask you a question and it changes depending on how you answer the question later in the form.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back up and change.
Oh, no.
and that is not the good. And this is how can you make a form like that nowadays?
Yes.
So I don't think enough people think about the customer, and this is
experience.
Back from 77, that what we were doing back then was how can we get the data to our scientists who don't have to know the computer and don't. The worst thing to say to me, and this is where your question about trends is, well, that's what everybody else does. And I'm like, well, then we shouldn't do that.
It's not working. I agree. I also agree that you changed it, but Social Security office is really easy to navigate because I had to change my last name and I was pleasantly surprised. It was easier than the DMV.
Oh man, I didn't change my last name because I thought that was going to be such a process.
I don't know why I changed it. My grandma, she was like, you should change your last name. She's traditional.
Well, you did in her honor. You guys are very close. So.
Yeah. And I don't know. I did get a tattoo of my maiden name, though, which my parents hate. That's okay. I'm like, it's for you. Anyway, so that's a random tangent.
So with NASA SEWP, you guys have some other competitors like GSA, NITAC. Obviously, DoD has their own customer base. When you're thinking of your program itself, are you thinking of retention of your current customers? Are you thinking of how you can bring in new customers? Sort of where's your focus as a leader with leading your mission, but also like, is it to bring in more? Is it to keep what you have? How do you navigate that challenge?
So we don't consider them to be competitors.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
And until recently, I actually never paid much attention to. I have more so with the current SEWP contract, just because I needed to leverage some of their knowledge base. Our mission has never been. It's been very clear. Our mission has never been about growing or even retaining customers. Our mission is to do the best job we can do. That's a part of being in NASA and being a government.
It's very wholesome.
Yeah, so confident.
My job has never been based on my job performance. Has never been based on how many people use SEWP. My job performance is how well is SEWP run, and if we run it well, people will use us. That's a sign that we are doing well. The fact that we've grown so much is not because we went out there saying we need to grow. It's we need to be good to our customers. We need to make sure our website is doing what it needs to do. We need to make sure that we're working with industry in a way that industry wants to work. Right? Understanding the FAR to the extent that we need to understand the FAR so that we can interpret it correctly for them to then use it in the way that they want without having to get into places that we shouldn't be. Understanding that, what our role should be. That's what we're here for. Whether people use us or not, that's an indication of maybe how well we're doing, but it's not an indication of what we want to get done.
I feel like I'm going to quote what you said earlier. If all leaders were like that, things would be in a lot better place.
So that sounds way better than a million OKRs that you're like, I don't know.
So I have a staff member, and he'll be listening to this, and he'll chuckle.
Hi, staff member.
who when he's actually a boomerang. He left us and came back. But when he first got there, he did a presentation, and the word growth was on the presentation, and he quickly learned how Joanne says no. I said, get that word off of there. Your job is not to grow us. Your job, because he was coming in to do outreach and such, as your job is to help us outreach to customers. Growth is not a measure that we care about.
I can feel the sweat that he had during that presentation. He's like, everywhere else I've ever worked loves the word growth.
Yes, and he came from industry, so
which is all about growth.
Yes. And one of my best friends.
That's great. Yeah. Oh man, that would be so stressful. Delete.
Control, find, replace.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so interesting. I wish everyone was less focused on growth.
Is that something that you came up with yourself, or is that just the NASA culture?
Again, why did we start? We started to help a scientist, and it is the culture.
Which is so cool.
we just wanted, we started this to help people, to help our customers. It's my philosophy from day one at NASA. I've always been focused on what is the best thing for our customer. And if I do that, then people will hopefully find usefulness for what I'm providing.
Yeah. Have you had the chance to play with any of the new supercomputers since your early days?
I have not been on supercomputers since the 90s. Yes.
Dang.
I haven't actually been on. I haven't programmed since, probably the mid 2000s.
I feel like before you retire, you should be like, hey guys, can I play around a bit?
It's past my time to, yeah.
Yeah, when you were just talking, I was thinking when you went to RIT, where you're like, I'm going to work for NASA. Was that your goal?
My goal, I wanted to be an astronomer.
That is really
very cool.
I built a 3-story Jupiter radio telescope to get out of taking biology. Also because it was a special thing we did. So listen to Jupiter radio waves. So I was that kind of a nerd.
Not nerd, very cool. Very cool.
Wanted to work for NASA. I got there's a full story with that, but to make it shorter, got a phone call, and Pete Bracken, eventually became my boss, is on the line, and I saw the piece of paper where I'm writing down all the stuff he's telling me about image processing and all these words. I had one really basic computer class at that point. And at the end of it, I said, I really want to work for NASA, but I got to tell you, I have no idea what you just said. And he said, that's okay. We're hiring you because you know science, and we'll teach you the programming piece. And that's how I got to be part of NASA. I still had hoped that I'd become an astronomer. And then I found out that if you don't have a doctorate degree in astronomy, they don't really care about you. So I did. And I found my place. I got hooked in, walked into an office my first day with my mentor and friend, Mary Desjardins. And we worked together for decades on many activities. So I got very lucky in working with her and having a great experience in that part of my life.
Oh, do you still own a telescope and look up sometimes?
Yeah, is that one of your hobbies?
No, but I did just watch a really bad movie where they had really bad telescope usage. It was Riff Tracks, if you know Riff Tracks, Mystery Science Theater, similar to Mystery Science Theater. They riff on old bad movies.
It's like when medical doctors watch Grey's Anatomy and they're like, that's not what that is.
If only it was that good. It was so horrible. I have not. I gave up the astronomy. It's hard to do astronomy. You got to get up in the middle of the night. You have to be a younger person than I am to do it. And I still remember seeing the rings of Saturn through a telescope. It's so cool, and really understanding all that. But life has gone on to different areas now.
Yes. Do you fangirl a little bit when NASA comes out with new images of things from space and they're like super detailed and crazy?
Not as much. Life goes on, and I
get different dreams.
Yes.
Yeah, you probably understand more than normal people like us.
It's enjoyable to watch. It's great to see. I'm a NASA fan, so happy to be there. I can't. It's not as all encompassing as it was in my teens and 20s.
It's a good hobby for your teens, though.
Yeah.
You're going to stay up late. You might as well stay up looking up at the stars and not playing like video games. I don't know.
We didn't have those back when I was a teen.
I remember they were coming up. I took astronomy as my senior class to hit my college requirement, like my science college requirement.
I heard it's a really hard class.
Well, one of the ways you get extra credit is they did one of those the teacher got a bunch of different telescopes, and if you got 20 people to come and do, it was like stargazing, but there's some planet was out, so there's a reason you were out there, right. But then if you got 20 people, each person who got 20 people to come got extra credit. I forget.
Did you get 20 people to come?
Oh, I did, because I was an RA, and I was like, this is our bonding experience.
I'm sorry, if you don't want me to write up for that sneaky alcohol bottle, I know you're hiding under your bed.
Do you think I was the RA that did that? No. I did not write people up at all.
Nice. I had an RA that didn't write people up either. She was cool.
Yeah, I would turn around so I didn't see anything. So, plausible deniability.
Speaking of hobbies, you have a very well-written blog. What made you want to start a blog? And I know it's you don't really talk about your professional career on your blog a lot. It's more your personal career. What inspired you to start that? So
I used to love to write. And
you're very good at it.
Yeah. and I felt I was. In the style in which I write. I learned that I'm not a creative writer who can do different. I can never write poetry.
No, you're funny.
I write what I write in the style that I write, and that's what I understand my limitation there, but I do enjoy it. And I stopped doing it. I hadn't really written for a long time. As life went along, I just decided I had things I wanted to say. So this will get us a little bit more into the more personal piece of my life. I knew as I started, in the back of my mind, that it would probably lead to me being more open about my life in full, but I didn't realize how much. So my initial blog, my first, I don't know how many months of it was personal, but not in depth of my history and past and current situation. And as I'll get into in just a second. But I knew I would be driven eventually to do something. What I was driven to was, eventually I had along with doing this blog, writing about things about my, dealing with my loss of my mom, and dealing with the loss of my dog, dealing with and also thoughts about people. I have lots of thoughts. So I was writing that. It's good
to have lots of thoughts.
Yeah. And then I was at a SEWP leadership retreat. We went off with a group of people to a place called Suicide Bridge Restaurant, which sounds morbid, but it's actually just a fable thing about this little bridge that is not really a suicide bridge.
That is such an intense name for a restaurant. This story took a turn.
For the fact that we're sitting there and I don't even know how we got there, but the people who I have known, most of them had, for 20 years, some of them, including the person I just talked about with the growth story, were there. And they started telling me about how people perceived me. And I realized I had been living in, I called it a glass closet. I think I'm going to call it a mirrored closet.
Okay.
Because I think that's kind of the wrong connotation, where in the 90s, I was the first person at NASA, one of the first in government to transition male to female transition, and had the surgery. So depending on how you look at it, trans woman is, I guess, the term. Learning all the new terms as I go along now that it's been that much time.
There are new terms every day.
Yeah.
So at the time I was a pioneer. I ran support groups. But I always had this idea that, well, I'm just going to be me and just ignore that part of me. And I did essentially for myself, but not really for all those around me. Why are people with me still? What I learned is some of it is because they saw something in me and what I had done that I myself did not see. And I've only learned that recently, that these people had that, and they were supporting me in ways that I did not know. And so now my blog has switched to being more fully supportive of the LGBTQIA community. I'm now an ERG co-chair. I'm going to conferences to learn more and to be more supportive, giving talks. And while the blog will continue to be personal in all sorts of ways, there is a tendency now to explore that part of me that I had left behind for quite a few years.
That's wonderful that it was your coworkers and the people in your life that made you feel empowered to really hone into that. And it wasn't just like something you came to by yourself. There's something beautiful about that.
Well, it was surprising, and I'm sorry that I did not realize how supportive they were in a way, and I feel like I feel very grateful and that I need to pay them back for all they've done.
I'm sure they don't feel that
way. In my now being more open and leveraging what they have done for me to help others be so. So the payback is to now be a leader within the community and try to find ways to support everybody else. At this point in my life, I don't need the support as much as I think I can give the support to others, and want to do that. And with the blog, with my speaking opportunities. So the blog is
Rhino Ramblings.
Rhino Ramblings. You just have to look up Joanne Woytek and blog, and you'll find it. It's just been a way to express myself and to learn more about where I come from, even, and much more how the community is. So it's a monthly blog right now. Yeah.
Hey, you're writing more than me, and I'm considered a writer, so kudos. I haven't written in forever.
Well, I can speak from a personal perspective. Like the younger generation of queer people, the reason that we have the rights, the reason that we have, I'm on a corporate podcast being like, oh, like I'm gay, like that's obviously like people know I'm married to a woman, people don't have a kid. These things aren't necessarily so I'm like a millennial. I was born in 88, came out in early 2000s.
That's when my son was born.
Yeah. So like we benefited from a lot of sacrifice that our older generations did. And then I hope we're still like making it better for Gen Z and Gen
Alpha.
Yeah, exactly.
All the gens.
Yeah. So it's, like with every generation, it gets better, but it's also like, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now in terms of like my personal life with being like, so like having like a 360, like it wasn't guaranteed that I could get married. It wasn't guaranteed that I'd be able to have kids or like a family and stuff like that. But it was like your sacrifices and your ability to be out and open and proud that has sort of changed the waves, to give us hope that we can do it, and then hopefully, pass it down the line. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. But I didn't do it for that. I had to. I mean, if people say, "Oh, you were brave," or I'm like, I had a choice of living or not.
Yeah.
And that actually was what my spouse said to me when she kicked me out of the house, and in a good way. Whatever. But you need to leave and find yourself, or you're going to die. And she recognized that, and it was true. So yes, there is that. I will say one of my props I use when giving a live talk is I'll hold up a blank piece of paper saying, these are the rules that existed for me. And now at least there's a 24-page set of rules for transitioning at NASA. So it's better than the blank piece of paper. And I was told by the lawyer that I talked to, basically, I had no rights, and if they wanted to fire me, they could. And the good news is I worked at Goddard, and they probably wouldn't. But I had no, and he was gay. He wasn't being non-supportive. He was being truthful. I had no rights, and in the 90s. But I had to do it. And
that's insane. So you talked to a lawyer before you talked to anyone at your work?
No, I wasn't the first person I talked to. I have to think of the exact. I had a friend I talked to when I knew it was going to happen. I went through a number of people, and one of them was the NASA. So it wasn't a lawyer for me. It was the NASA lawyer going to the NASA lawyer and saying, "I'm going to do this." And
that is insane that you had no rights. That's really sad, and I'm glad that you do now.
I'm glad folks do now. Yes.
Yeah.
And bathrooms to go to. And
yes, absolutely. And then what do you hope for the future of diversity and inclusion in not only Goddard, but just government in general? I know that you don't consider yourself someone who I know you do talks and things like that, but do you have kind of a sprinkling or an idea in your mind of what you hope the future looks like?
Well, what I'm seeing is, I think one of the issues that I'm seeing out there right now, there's the known issues.
Yes, that's true. That's true. This would be a 14-hour podcast if we went really in depth.
But I will say what struck me as I started getting into these areas is, there's a lot out there. That's good. Not clear if there's a lot of, there's still room for cross understanding, but I think it's there. I think it's just making sure it's clear. And by cross understanding, I mean all the communities. There's, I forget how many ERGs there are at Goddard. There's a whole number of them. What's nice to see is that they are communicating with each other. There's still not there's still work to be done in getting the management support for a broad range of that. And that's for all the ERGs. I think it's just, we exist, but, where is that support? I hope to learn more. There's a group called Out and Equal. I'm going to their conference in October, and I'm going to learn about ERGs
cool.
there. Yeah, so
nice.
So it's all about that. To me, diversity. We just recently hired our first white male in our civil service staff, and it wasn't because we did it. The diversity wasn't planned. The diversity was we picked the people who were the best people, and we don't look at all that piece of it. We look at what do you bring to the table, and it should be that people look at first and not. And if you do that, you realize the diversity is good. Going back, everybody's different. That permeates my life in terms of why is SEWP success. My staff is very diverse, and it's diverse in every possible way you can think about, which is great. Now that I understand that I need to have that diversity, because when I started, I didn't want that. I wanted
everyone to be like you.
Lockstep, and I'm like, now I know that I have weaknesses. Those are helped by having somebody who's has a different viewpoint. I have issues in my personal life. Other people have issues in their personal life. Okay, don't let it overwhelm you, because recognize we all have issues. Things you can learn about diversity don't have to do with racism or homophobia. It shouldn't be any of that, because all that should go away. We should all just want to be people and understand the difference is we all bring something of ourselves to the table. That's where I want to see us get to. I want to see us be supportive. Finding, that's certainly an area that I'm trying to figure out how I can find time for it. but wanting to make sure that when somebody needs an ear or to hear or to talk, that they have a place to go, that they feel comfortable, and that we build a society that allows for that to happen, and understand that there are issues that will always be there. That doesn't mean you don't keep moving forward. You shouldn't go back, because going back doesn't get you anywhere. Going forward's the right way.
Absolutely. My husband and I were just talking about this the other day. We're like, there's always going to be something happening in the world that's horrific, and you just have to find a way to make it a little bit better.
Yeah.
So
positivity.
Yeah. Positive when you can.
Yeah, that was just like a really beautiful way.
I know. I'm like, should we wrap it up? Because I don't know if it's going to get better than that.
Yes, yeah. So as we're coming to time here, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share, either on the NASA SEWP front, a personal front?
I think you covered a lot of it. I will say,
we did ping pong a lot. I'm really sorry about that.
Just a little note, I will be going to my first nerd convention and giving a talk at Cleveland for a sci-fi gay day convention called, what's it called? Flaming Fest or something of that nature.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like fun.
And so I'm going to actually be able to talk about all these things. I'll talk about being a nerd, being NASA, and being in the community.
Are you going to dress? Is it like Comic-Con-y? Are you going to dress up?
I'm not going to dress. I'm going to. So I won't say what I'm going to do, because in case somebody hears this.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's got to be a surprise.
But it's not going to be. No, I'm not a dress. No, I'm not that type of nerd. I don't dress up nerd.
I am.
I don't mind people doing that. I'm looking forward to seeing them doing that. I do not dress up in that manner.
I love a good costume.
I plan on being very professional and almost just have a little bit of extraness to it. So it's if you want to read my blog, please do so. It is meant to be read. It is meant to be shared. The more people who read it, the better I feel about what I'm doing, and hopefully people feel that it's worthwhile in terms of what I'm saying, and helps them understand not just what I've gone through, but what other people go through, and not in all sorts of ways. I've talked about depression, anxiety, loss. It's not just about being trans. It's much more than that. And
all encompassing.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess that's my other piece, is when you go back to the DEI, I really dislike when it's trans or gay or and I've like
You're
I just
more
like,
than one
I,
thing.
I just like that back in the 90s. It was even worse.
Yeah,
but it's still like, I still see this. I'm like, why don't we just make sure that we're encompassing everybody, and in fact, even go beyond the community, encompass anybody who has differences. That's what matters.
Yeah, I love that. And we'll put your blog in our show notes too, so people can easily get to it. The first one is great. You can crack open a White Russian, which is what you were drinking when you watched the movie that inspired the name of this blog.
Yes. Rhinoceros by Ionesco.
And I loved your reference of Gene Wilder, and that you referenced like a movie that someone might know. And I was like, the only movie that I can think of is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Right. Yes, he's been in quite a few, but you definitely probably don't know Zero Mostel at all, so which is
no, I didn't, which I'm sure I have aunts and uncles that are very into that genre of movie, and I'm sure they're going to be very disheartened that I don't know who that is.
If you like old comedies,
I do. I love.
He was in the late 60s. He was. I look at him as a Robin Williams. Came from his
I love Robin
stock.
Williams. Yeah.
Of comedy, very physical, very active comic.
I love slapstick humor. So.
Yes.
Same. And I love Steve Martin and Martin Short and all those people too. But perfect. All right, Liz, would you like to take it away for the ending? I hate doing the ending, so I always transition it back to you, but it's just because I hate the pause.
Oh, it's cool.
Which you probably hate too, but it's fine.
I'll take that. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great conversation, a lot of government work, but also a lot of personal growth. So we really appreciate your vulnerability on the podcast with us. And to our followers who are listening or watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue to follow us. Thanks for joining us for our latest podcast episode.